and gentlemen, welcome aboard. Welcome to the second session of Exploration with the Blind. I'm excited to be with Jenny Doane. I'm explain in just a few moments of what she does. First of all, I just want to thank all the sponsors from the Cultures and Abilities team, as well as events, and also a couple representatives from our dorms to help us paint the rock outside. You can see down to our right, going the other direction. In addition to that, we are now going to have our speaker come up. Her name is Jenny Doane. She is a certified mobility specialist and vision rehabilitation specialist. She has been working in Southwest Michigan for quite a while, in West Michigan, and she has two children, a daughter and a son, 11-year-old daughter, or 14-year-old daughter, and 11-year-old. No, sorry, I missed it. 11.
No worries. 11 and 9.
11 and 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and she actually loves. Guess what her favorite sport is? What do you guys think her favorite sport is?
I know the answer, so I'm not going to say.
It's pickleball. She loves playing pickleball. She's an OG, as she told me earlier this morning. She is an OG pickleball player, as we can tell.
I'm old.
Hey, you are also young, so there you go. And she loves traveling. I do too. Hopefully, you all love some traveling, either in or out to the state. And she just loves just doing what she does as a mobility specialist. And one of her goals is to help with people with vision loss gain independence in the workplace and in schools and everything in between. So now, everyone, please give a round of applause for Jenny Doane.
All right. Thank you, Nasco. All right. So, like Nasco said, I work with individuals that are blind and low vision in West Michigan. I've been doing it for, I don't know, it's been like almost 16 years, so quite a while. But I want you all to imagine you have your eyes closed and you are walking across campus and you need to find your classes. You need to avoid obstacles, you need to cross streets, and you have your eyes closed and you can't see anything. So that's where orientation mobility comes in. It's very important. So there's lots of people that travel non-visually or with low vision, and so that is something I want to talk about today. So we're going to learn more about what orientation mobility is, how it's taught, and just make you more aware and informed as a peer of maybe an individual with vision loss, or even as a driver out there, some things to think about. So first of all, what is orientation and mobility? So that is when we are teaching individuals that are blind or visually impaired the concepts, skills, and techniques that are necessary for safe, efficient, and independent travel in a variety of environments. So orientation and mobility encompasses a lot of skills that we teach. Often you will see someone learning how to use the white cane. And we don't always use the white cane, but often it's incorporated. To use a white cane, you should be legally blind, which I'm going to go over what that definition is in a little bit. But orientation mobility includes learning how to properly use the cane, the grip, how to move the cane back and forth, how to detect obstacles, how to detect a drop-off, like let's say a stairwell pops up, right? You want to be able to detect things in front of you, go around them. So it allows individuals with vision loss to be independent because when you're moving it in front of you, you have time to react and move around things in the environment. We also teach orientation skills. So how do you keep track of where you are in space in a variety of environments? So teaching how to map and build routes in your head and pay attention to landmarks in the environment and really use good listening skills and awareness skills. A lot of people, most people are visual, and we totally disregard a lot of auditory clues in our environment that people that are low vision or blind rely on to help keep track of where they are. So we teach a lot of those orientation skills. We teach indoor travel, outdoor travel. We're working on things like, how do I use the cane on an escalator, an elevator, stairs, how to be properly guided by another person and teach them how to guide you safely. Navigating a mall, a stadium, an airport, a college campus. So there's so many different environments that we travel in, and there's different ways to go about traveling in those environments. So that is all part of orientation and mobility training. And one thing about mobility training is it can be used at different parts, I guess, of your life in a way. So a lot of times, if someone is born with a visual impairment, they're going to get orientation mobility training at a young age. They might get their first cane when they're, 2 years old, but they're going to gain those skills as they get older. But then sometimes mobility training comes back in your life when you need to navigate a whole new environment, maybe like a college campus. So maybe you have a mobility instructor meet with you and kind of help you map that out in your head and make landmarks and know where to go so you can be independent traveling on a college campus. Or it could be a new work environment. Say you're going to work in a really huge building and you need to get familiarized. Sometimes mobility instructors are also called in to do that type of work as well. So I want to cover a little bit of cane skills. And one challenge we have is for someone in the audience to put a blindfold on and use a cane. So first I'm going to demonstrate proper cane use. And then we're going to ask for a volunteer to try out some cane skills to locate something in the room. So I have 4 canes here. There's lots of different types of canes. So you may see someone with an all-white cane. You may see someone with a cane with a red section just at the bottom. As long as the cane is predominantly white, then it is I would say that's a pretty normal cane. It's covered under the white cane law, which I'll talk about later. But primarily, you're going to see canes that are all white or a cane that's white with a red section at the bottom. It's a universal sign of legal blindness or vision loss. A lot of canes fold up. Some canes don't. Canes that are rigid that don't fold up, sometimes people prefer those because you get more information. These little breaks in the cane, sometimes people say, well, I don't feel quite as much when I'm moving my cane on the ground. But everybody has preferences. Just like people have preferences, for sports equipment, people have preferences for canes. So you'll see lots of different types. But a cane just needs to be able to detect things. I always say at least 2 steps ahead of your body because you need time to react. So I'm going to unfold this cane, and you can just they have an elastic string through them, so they kind of just unfold. Now this cane goes up to my nose, and so sometimes you see people carrying canes with a height that goes up to their nose, which is fine. Typically people carry them from like the middle of their chest all the way up to their nose, and sometimes it's preference, but mostly you need it to detect things far enough out so you have reaction time. So the goal is to move the cane out in front of your body, and you don't need to swing it super wide all the time. You actually just need to clear the space that you're walking in. And so you move the cane with every step you take, and as you go, when you find a drop-off or an obstacle like a trash can, your cane's going to tell you. So we teach people how to move around obstacles but not lose the path that they're walking and maintain orientation. That's all part of mobility training. And it's definitely very possible, to navigate almost any environment in the world for people. So it's great. The cane gives a lot of independence. So I want to have a volunteer. Nasco, do you have anything to say right now before we pick someone? Or
Before she does it, actually, I was just thinking about this. For me, as a person who's a cane user, one thing that you want to be aware of is Obviously, there are types of situations where sometimes your cane doesn't always tell you things. If it's not high enough, or there's specific, like, if there's like a fence, that's another thing that could be a big deal. So
Yes.
aware of that, especially as someone's going to kind of probably experiment with it later on if you get that chance. So.
Yeah, one of the things that the cane doesn't protect you from would be, like, if you were, imagine like a playground equipment that's higher up and lifted above the ground, right? Your cane would go under it and you would walk into it. So there are times that, your cane is not going to catch everything. Yes.
If your hand is almost through in your face, like my arm is like out like this.
Yep.
It's called a hand. What is that? What is
It's
that term called?
a protective technique.
Yeah, it's a protective way.
Like an upper body protective technique we teach when you're anticipating maybe something that could be higher up, like a mirror of a car when you're walking around a car. You want to use upper arm protection. So another thing, just a quick touch on, we're not really getting into guide dogs too much, but another way people travel is with guide dogs too. And one of the benefits, I guess, of a guide dog, other than a cane, would be they would take you around those objects that are higher up, because dogs are trained to move you around some of those objects that could be dangerous for you, that your cane might go under. So that's one perk, but dogs are also a lot of work. So there's lots of perks to just keeping it simple with your cane, too.
Just getting one is a difficult situation.
That's true, yes. So the process to qualify for a guide dog is actually pretty intense and a lot of work, and you have to be a very good cane traveler first before you can qualify for a guide dog, which people often don't realize that. You can't just go get a guide dog easily. So... okay, so we want to challenge someone to put on a blindfold, and we want to challenge you to locate the door that exits this room to the outside. Do we?
To my right, I don't know how you're facing, but from my right perspective.
So, okay. What's your name? What was that? Donovan. Okay. So I'm going to give you a blindfold, and I'm going to teach you. Now, to make it a little less dangerous, let's start off on the floor so that I'm not going to teach you stair technique right now. Yeah, yeah, that's good. Okay. Now this cane's probably a good size for you because you're taller than me. You got it? You got the blindfold on? All right. Are you right-handed or left-handed? Okay. So you're going to turn your body to the right towards the door. And what you want to do is hold your hand out in front of you a little bit, lower. And you're going to move the cane back and forth an even amount. And I want you to start walking straight. And where you think is towards the door at least. And see how as you go, your cane's catching the edge of the stair. So you kind of can keep track of where you are by feeling that particular thing. Exactly. Yes. Now, what do you feel that's different? Yeah, the texture of the ground changed, right? So you felt the rug in front of the door. So that is a great landmark, actually, that a lot of people that are visually impaired pay attention to. Their cane will catch a rug, which often is by a door, right? We have rugs. Now find the door with the cane. So keep moving it. It should sound different. You hear that change in sound? Perfect. Good job, Donovan. Perfect. That was great. I'll take that from you. Could you tell the difference when you heard the sound change of the door? Yeah. So sounds and paying attention to what your cane is feeling and what it sounds like is all part of mobility training, and to really train your ear for those changes in sound, because it's going to tell you what you found, because a trash can sounds different than a door, and you're going to start to really be able to know what's around you based on the sounds that your cane makes when you're moving around in the environment. All right, so another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was auditory cues and maintaining orientation, and how people use sound in their environment. So there's something called echolocation. Yes.
I actually got trained by a guy named Daniel. I forgot his name, but he taught me a little bit basics of echolocation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's not always helpful either, but it's pretty. Yeah. It can be helpful to a degree. Yes.
It can, yes. So echolocation basically is using how sound reflects off of other objects around you. And so a lot of people can tell when they walk by a big tree or they walk under an overhang of a building. The sound changes when we walk by objects, even just like a pillar coming down from, the ceiling in a room. As you get closer to it, you can actually hear it. And a lot of us with good vision, we have no idea because we're using our vision all the time. But there's lots of things in the environment where the sound changes that can help people keep track of where they are, actually. So,
that was described as sound shadows is really important because, today, actually, I can do this quick story. I was currently out just taking her back to the quorum, and I could hear there's a pillar to my right when I walked near the quorum. Every day, I always hear it, and everybody's like, "Well, how do you do that?" Well, that's because that's part of a thing called sound shadow, which she just was talking about a little bit as well. So
exactly, yes. So we're teaching those types of techniques to use when we're providing mobility training. Typically, mobility training is provided on a one-on-one basis, so an instructor to one person. Sometimes if you're at a residential training center, which a lot of states have, you might be grouped with another person, but it's usually small groups or one-on-one training. And it's customized, right? Because everyone has different goals. Sometimes we meet someone and they're like, you know what? I just want to get to my mailbox and I want to take Uber to the store and back. And that's really all I want to do. Now, there's a lot of people that want to travel the whole world. So you work in a lot of different environments. But we do it based on their goals. Everyone's different in what they want to do. So speaking of different, everybody also has different vision levels. So vision loss is a spectrum. A lot of people think, well, you can either see or you can't see. And vision loss is very much so different in every person. So sometimes you might hear the term legal blindness, you might hear low vision, you might hear visually impaired. There's so many different ways people describe vision loss. And so legal blindness is, the definition of that is your vision, your visual acuity in your best eye is 20/200 or worse with correction. So what that means is your visual acuity is how clear you see. So when you're at the eye doctor and you're looking at that chart, the big E at the bottom is the 20/200 line. If you can't see the big E with glasses on and correction, you are legally blind. So it doesn't mean you're totally blind. So when someone says legally blind, their vision is very blurry and unclear, right, at a distance. So that's something important to know because when someone says I'm legally blind, a lot of people think that's totally blind and it's not true. Low vision is typically described as 20/70, a visual acuity of 20/70, which is a few lines higher on the visual acuity chart. But basically, their vision's going to be a little less blurry at a distance. But there's also something that can make you legally blind called visual field loss. So we see left to right, top to bottom in our visual field. And some people have a visual field that is like looking through a straw. So it's all black around them. And we call that a visual field constriction. And so if it's 20 degrees or less, you are considered legally blind. So can you imagine walking around looking through a straw all day? And that straw is clear. So maybe you see like a sign and you can read the sign because it's really far away. But yet a person standing right next to you, you have no idea they're there because everything to the left and right of you, you can't see because all you see is through that straw.
Yes, that would be considered as vision.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so we work with a lot of people as well that need cane training that have that type of vision because they don't see below them either. So we want actually them to learn more scanning techniques where they're scanning their environment with that tiny little hole they have, right? But they can't look down at the ground all day with that hole. And so we teach to use the cane and then scan your environment. So it can be confusing because some people will say, well, how did you read that sign that's 100 feet away or something, but you can't see me I'm right next to you and you have no idea I'm there. So some vision loss can actually be a little confusing to the general population because they just don't understand vision loss. It can be very different with each person. You have a question? Well, so when we talk about legal blindness and low vision, it's best corrected. So what that means is a person, even with their glasses on, they still can't see to the left and right of them, or they still can't read the vision chart with glasses. So most people that we work with, glasses does not fix their vision problem. Or, even with glasses, it might make it a little better, but it's still not great.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I comment about the vision loss situation? Because that's also going to be a little bit of a misconception. So one of the things I learned about, for me, I was born blind. A lot of individuals can be either vision loss, which is way more common than born blind. And so that's a thing you don't want to get mixed up between vision loss and what it means if you're already vision impaired or blind.
Yep. So, and everybody has different preferences sometimes of how they describe themselves. Some people will say I'm low vision. Some people say I'm visually impaired. Some people say I'm blind. Because technically, if you're legally blind, you are blind. You may have some light perception or you may have a little window, but you technically are blind. And so just keep that in mind. And if you're ever wondering, just ask them, how do you describe your vision? And then they can tell you because everyone's vision is so different. Some of the elderly people I work with have something called macular degeneration, and that's a eye disease you get later in life, and you can see clear out of the sides of your vision, but not centrally. So they could see like a fuzzy on the ground, but as soon as they turn to grab it, they're using their central vision to grab it, it's gone. And so there's just a lot of really different ways that our vision can be impaired. So keep that in mind. Another statistic, I think it's about 80% of people that use the white cane are not totally blind. They're legally blind, but they're not totally blind. So they may have some light perception or they may have some visual field loss and they need it to get around safely, but they actually are not like totally black blind, right?
I used to be black blind, but now I have light perception enough to determine light, which is kind of cool. So it can happen over time.
It can, yep. Vision can change. Some people have surgeries and different things that can improve it. So when we're talking about different levels of vision, that also changes orientation and mobility instruction too. So the way I approach and the way I teach also changes. If someone has vision they can use, then I often incorporate that in our lessons. I want them to use the vision that they have if it's usable. So maybe if they have some fuzzy vision, but they can see large objects that are like, very dark or bright. Maybe if we're on a college campus, they see the outline of a particular building really well, and that's a landmark for them. It's a visual landmark, and it's always going to be there. So they use their vision in different ways to identify things. If they were born totally blind, a lot of people don't have the same concepts that individuals with vision have, right? Like, just knowing the layout of a road and that a road keeps going, or that, the placement of where the sidewalk is. All of these concepts they have to build up in their mind over time because they've never seen them, right? Someone has to teach them all these concepts. So mobility training can look very different depending on if someone's ever had it. But there's a lot of concept building for individuals that were born with vision loss. But if you acquired vision loss later in life, you would kind of know what the environment looks like more. So that can definitely change instruction. Another thing that often happens is people don't realize, even if you have no vision, we talked about auditory cues, and you can pick up a lot of things in the environment that people don't really realize. For example, like the way I walk. If I was around someone that was totally blind all the time, they probably would learn my gait, and they would know who I am based on the way I walk. Of course, they can learn voices, and a lot of people will identify people by voices if you're around them often. But the way you breathe, the way you walk. When they walk in an elevator, they hear little sounds and breathing that lets them know that someone's there. So there's so many things that a person can pick up on auditorily to give them information about the person or the environment that we don't even realize.
It's even the height, too. I can sometimes tell by the height, or tell by not even just breathing. Sometimes I can just sense that there's someone there. It's really interesting. It's really hard to explain it, but sometimes you can just kind of sense there's someone there, but you don't realize who it is. But yeah it can be kind of creepy.
Well, yeah. Which leads into, if you're walking by someone that's a cane user, it's really helpful to say, "Hey, how you doing today?" Or, "Hey, Nasco, it's Jenny." That just lets them know where you are in space. So the tendency is to want to be quiet and get out of their way, right? You don't want to, mess them up in their travel, but you really don't need to do that. I mean, obviously don't run into their cane, but it's helpful to just say, "Hey, how's it going?" Then they know right where you are. They can use your auditory location of your voice to kind of navigate or move away from you if they're walking by you. So it's always helpful to definitely say hi.
The annoying thing is when I hear people walking, I'm like, "Hello," and because I just want to say, I just want to know who that was, because I'm not going to say to every single stranger, obviously, but especially on campus, it can get a little bit fuzzy sometimes too. If I'm going in the right direction, I'm like, "Where are you going?" Sometimes I'll ask, "Where are you going?" because then it'll give me an idea of where I'm in too. So
Exactly. Yep. Yes. Okay. So we talked about active listening. One more thing about landmarks. We talked a little bit about how people with low vision might use their vision to use, large objects or things that are bright or that their vision picks up. But people that travel non-visually use different types of landmarks, and some can be temporary or transient landmarks. So, for example, like a trash can at the end of a driveway. Say someone's walking down the sidewalk and they notice a trash can. That's a transient landmark because it's going to go away, right? So it might not be there again. So some landmarks are, you have to keep that in mind. You can't always rely on everything you find with your cane along your route because it might not be there when you come back. A parked car, but like stop signs, building entrances, those will always be there. Or maybe like a fountain on campus, like water that's running. That's definitely something someone can hear.
Some term the temporary ones, some people call it a clue too. Could be another term as well. So it depends on the instructor, but yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about how to help someone. So a lot of times when you see someone that's a cane user, if they travel non-visually, they're not always going to be walking a straight line, right? It's impossible for anyone to walk a perfect straight line if you have no vision. And that's never the goal of orientation mobility either, is to teach someone to walk a perfect route in straight line. The goal is to problem solve and to keep track of where you are along the way. And so a lot of times when you see someone walking, if they look like they're going in the wrong direction, it's possible they're not. So you always want to ask if they need help. If you think they need help, you always just want to go up to them and say, hey, man, like, do you need help? Don't grab them and start pulling them to take them in the right direction. Don't assume they need help because they might know where they are and they're on their route.
Yeah, if you were here last year, we did this before as as a thing for the first session. So if you want to look back at it, go look on YouTube. You can. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. But the other thing too is giving directions. So a lot of times people do need a little bit of assistance when they're in a big open area like campus to give them some clues of where they are. So if they ask you for directions, obviously it's easy for us to just be like, oh, it's over there, right? And point. Well, pointing is not helpful, right? It's easy to want to do that, but giving more specific directions is helpful. So, and everybody takes directions a little differently. So sometimes you can change what you say based on their feedback to you. But let's say I had to describe how to get to the bathroom. So if they're standing in front of you, you might say, okay, you're going to walk straight ahead in the direction you're pointing. And then when you get to the couch, you're going to make a left. And you're going to walk straight ahead until you get to the wall. And then it's the first door on your right once you get to that wall. So giving some more specific, like, landmarks that they might find along the way. They can count doorways with their cane. They can sense when there's a hallway and a turn. All of those things they'll be able to do. So you could say, walk straight down this hallway, and then you're going to make your first turn at the next hallway. That's perfectly fine. Giving those details will help them locate it. But if you have time, you could say, do you want to just follow me there? Or do you need an arm, and I'll guide you there? You can offer those things to someone. And if you don't want to do that, you can also give, like, specific directions. So what we're going to do next is a little bit of a guiding exercise. So I'm going to talk about how to properly guide someone quickly, and then I want a volunteer to wear a blindfold, and then I will guide them so they can kind of feel that experience of being guided. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So typically, if you just kind of touch their hand, then they don't have to reach out into space, and they'll know where your arm is. And then they're going to grab the back of your elbow. Typically, I say with a C grip. That's a good grip to use because then they can feel where my body's going. Now, I, as the guide, would stand a half step in front of them, and they stand a half step behind me and kind of to the side, and we'll just walk forward. Nasco. And they can have their cane or not have their cane. Typically, they're going to have a cane, but this is what we want to do. So if I had to stop quickly, he has time to also stop and not run into or step off whatever I had to step off. And there's different techniques as well for going downstairs together, going through a doorway, which we teach all of that as well in orientation and mobility training. Yeah. So do we have a volunteer that would like to be guided and would be willing to put a blindfold on? Any takers? Any takers? Oh, okay. Yeah. Adam? Okay. Have you done it before?
Yes,
I've never been the one being guided.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do it.
This is perfect, though.
Yeah, that's great.
Adam, you're gonna see my.
Okay, come towards me so you're away from the stairs. You can throw that on.
Too late. I fell down the stairs, knocked my head.
Okay.
I might do that as a speaker or a host episode. Well, that goes to host.
Now, a lot of times I will, if you're right-handed and you have your cane in your right hand, then I'll often guide them on the opposite side so that they can use their cane in their dominant hand. But basically, I'm going to touch your hand, and then you can find the back of my elbow. Perfect. And then as we walk, you'll just stay kind of, and I try to walk at the person's pace. If they walk really slow, I just try to go at what they're comfortable with. You don't have to walk super slow. Some people assume, oh my goodness, I'm guiding a blind person. We have to walk so slow, right? But that's not the case. Whatever they're comfortable with, match their pace. So another thing you can do is, like, let's say you're guiding them to a chair. Now, this is a table, but if I put my hand on the table, then you can trail your hand down and locate it. So that's a good way to locate where the table or you're, guiding someone to something.
So now I'll use my other hand. So if
Yeah.
you're holding on, just hold on to your other hand.
Yeah, you can trail down really either way. So, exactly. Good.
Good job, Adam. A round of applause for Adam, guys.
You can take it off. How did that feel?
I was a little nervous because of but I mean, I trusted that you weren't going to take me off the step or anything, but it was just like, I can't see that.
Yes, yeah.
Congratulations, Adam. Give him one more round of applause for Adam.
All right. Good. Okay, anything else you want to add on to guiding, Nasco?
Let me just do this quick. So,
This?
no.
Oh, okay.
So, I'll do this again for those who haven't seen the first session. If we're going from a narrow space, this happens all the time with me and Carolyn, a lot, especially this weekend. No, I'm just telling you, okay? No, I'm just sorry. So if you put your arm behind your back here,
Uh-huh.
the blind person moves.
Yes.
How do you describe it?
Yeah, I always say this is called like the narrow passageway position. So the person doing the guiding puts their arm behind their back.
Like you're being arrested by police.
Yep. And then the person being guided straightens their arms so they're not walking on your heels. And so you can fit through doorways this way, or if you're in a crowd. If we're going to go through a door, I would want to say, oh, Nasco, the door opens on our left, so that he can hold the door for himself once I open it and go through.
Otherwise, it'll smack him in the face.
Yep.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
I was feeling this on Saturday. We were sitting at a table, and then we had to go past two tables to get to where he can use the mic. And it was really difficult for me, at least, to describe, because sometimes the chairs were pushed out, and he kept bumping into them because I didn't know what I was supposed to be saying. So how would you do? So let's say it was in a conference.
Mm-hmm.
How would I say the chair?
Right. So was he directly behind you in the narrow passageway position?
So I told her about that, but
Once we started doing that,
It helped.
yeah.
he was still tripping over it, and I felt bad because I couldn't see behind me to know what he was tripping on to reward him.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to kind of engage ourselves as blind people. I mean, but
Yeah. He should have his cane in his other hand too. And so he can kind of use that slightly on his side. But as long as he's not on your heels and he's directly behind you.
I did not use my cane that time.
Yeah.
Well, I had to, because that was the thing about the distance kind of matters for me, because it's like if it's not that far, I don't use it as like if I'm just only right here and right here, like the speaker wasn't far. The only issue was how the tables were set up in the first place. If I knew them already how they were, like if I went there earlier enough, in a general venue, like if I was speaking or something, I would really need to, have my cane. But yeah.
For me was that the chairs were being pushed out and being satted, so it wasn't the same each time we were going up.
It was always changing. Yeah.
Sure.
And I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't hear it that time. I couldn't hear it this time.
said something.
Sure.
Want to be like I want to. I just. Sorry, I don't want to like make all about me. But I'm his girlfriend. I'm not. I want to. I want to be his girlfriend.
Sure.
You know. Like,
It's better to err on the side of like telling someone something's there so then they can avoid it. Yeah.
I also tell her like it's. Sometimes I do tell her. Hang on.
It happens. It happens. There's always times we're all not paying attention, right? So we're moving our cane correctly.
I think it's good to call out somebody sometimes once in a while.
Yeah, it's better to, err on the side of caution and say when there's a step or a pole, but you could also say, oh, there's a pole coming, get behind me, and then get your arm behind you.
Sometimes they do it way too much. You don't want to do it too much.
True. Only when it's necessary. Yeah.
Really, probably, like, there's people who there's a lot of people who say it all the time, and I'm like, please, just. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah. You don't have to give every detail. Only if it's something they might trip on or they need to step up or down or, that might hit them. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the white cane law. So earlier, I referenced, people carry different types of canes. And to qualify under the white cane law, your cane needs to be predominantly white. There are actually cane manufacturers that make pink and black and blue canes. Invutech makes them. And it's just kind of like a fun cane. But if you're using an all-pink cane, you're not under the white cane law. So the white cane law in Michigan, each state actually kind of has their own little version. But in Michigan, a driver of a vehicle should not approach a crosswalk or any other pedestrian crossing without taking all necessary precautions to avoid accidents or injury to a blind pedestrian carrying a cane or using a dog guide or walker. A person who violates this section is guilty of a misdemeanor, punishable by imprisonment for not more than 90 days and a fine of not more than $100 or both. They're also liable in damages for any injuries you cause a blind pedestrian. I know. So basically, at a crosswalk, they have the right of way all the time. So you need to be aware of that. And in general, as a driver, I think it's important as you approach an intersection, you should be glancing at all four corners to look for pedestrians. Sometimes someone's coming on a bike or, just really paying attention to who's on the sidewalk because pedestrians at legal crossings do have the right of way. And so just really giving that a glance. Also, as a driver, if you do see someone that is carrying a white cane and they're on the corner waiting, we teach people how to safely cross the street. They know how to monitor traffic. They usually know what they're doing if they're out there. And so some drivers want to just yell out their window, oh, it's safe to cross, but you really don't want to do that. That person is taught how to monitor the traffic, and really, if they start paying attention to you yelling, something else could change at that intersection, another car could come through, and it's no longer safe. So we really need them to be doing the monitoring. You just drive as normal and pay attention if there's pedestrians and yield to them.
Yeah. Actually, there are people. So what? There are specific intersections. So I'll grab the mic just so you can go better. So there are specifically some intersections that will not have a thing called an AP. Is that even proper? An APS. Was that ever mentioning anything or no? I can explain a little bit.
But go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, no, but it's it's called the auditory pedestrian signal, and that is specifically for some intersections. If they're more in the busier commercial intersections or more business, is what we would call them. There's specific categories. I won't go into the whole mess of it, but there's specific those kind of categories. but which will tell you when to cross. Now, unfortunately, they can also glitch. So we get trained in specifically how to determine if it's red or green by the specific, if there's a traffic, I know you're going to talk about that a little bit again, but traffic on the right or left, depending on, that's called a parallel street. So if it's moving, kind of beside you, in the street in front of you is going to be called your perpendicular street. So it's crossing over the parallel, if that makes any sense. And so if I start to hear a car idling or is not moving at all on my in front of me, and I hear the street. So if you can see my hand, this is the car that comes into the parallel intersection, and then as soon as it hits the middle right here, halfway, then I can cross. And it doesn't always work all the time, but yeah, that's. I also have learned that trucks can be helpful because they have a little bit more heavier time because it's a little bigger trucks that I can tell there's a little bit more of a window to when to cross.
So yeah, we use the sound of parallel and perpendicular traffic to determine when to go. When you think about it, when the light turns green, we surge forward, a bunch of cars typically on a light, right? So you can hear that if that happens. It doesn't. It depends on how busy the intersection and the time of day. There's a lot of things that come into play with that. But keep in mind, they're standing on the corner analyzing the intersection sometimes. So if you see someone waiting there, but they're not starting to cross, it's possible they're listening to the perpendicular and parallel traffic to understand the pattern of the light, right? Is there a left-hand turn, like a green arrow, right? So a lot of times, if they're really familiar with the intersection, then they have an easier time just walking up and knowing when to go. But sometimes you got to stand on the corner and really analyze it, right, Nasco? And know, yeah, you really got to listen to the pattern and learn when it's safe to go. So just because you see someone standing on the corner, yes, the white cane law says you have to yield to them, but they might not be crossing yet. So just keep that in mind, that they don't always go every cycle of the light that you expect them to.
Also, we're also going to veer, as we already talked about. So if we do veer off towards the street on our left or right, depending on the parallel street, we have to go towards the one more in the center. Otherwise, we're going to, possibly get hit by a car.
That's true. We teach veering techniques, yes. So we teach lots of techniques to help them correct. If you're in the crosswalk and you are veering into traffic, how do we know that? So there's lots of techniques like that that are taught in orientation mobility to help keep people safe and so that they can cross the street independently.
We're not going to talk about those. But
yes. Couple other things about just in general transportation. How do people get around, right? We know that they can walk. They can build routes and cross streets and get around in a lot of places, but other ways would be there are paratransit systems in a lot of bigger cities, and the one in Kent County is called GoBus, and so people can get a reduced fare if they have a disability and can get like a one-way ride for, I don't know, $3.50 or $4. Cheaper than an Uber, right? But that is one way a lot of people will get around is paratransit systems, door-to-door we call it sometimes, because you call, you schedule your ride, tell them where you're going, they pick you up and bring you. Just similar to Uber, so that's another option, right? Uber and Lyft, those apps are accessible to use on a smartphone for someone that's low vision or blind, so they are using those services too. There's rideshare options, and then, of course, the city bus too. So in orientation mobility training, we do teach people how to use the city bus. How do you know what bus you're getting on, when to get off? Those are all things that people can do, and we teach. So other things that are helpful would be technology, right? So apps. There's tons of apps that help us get around big cities and use different types of transportation. Even just like Apple Maps and Google Maps, you can choose how you're going to get around, right? You can say, I want to take a city bus. I want to walk this route. I'm going to get in a car. They give you all different options. So all of those are accessible. They do make specific apps like Blind Square, Soundscape, Good Maps. Those are apps that are more tailored to someone with vision loss. And so they'll give you more information about your environment when you are using them on your smartphone. Do you have a favorite you like, Nasco?
I have a lot. I love Soundscape though because it's a lot. So I'm going to use an art production term, but it's called stereo. If you have headphones, especially if you have do not use like JBLs, those because you can't hear the sidewalk. But anything that's open eared, you can hear it stereo. You can hear if it's on left, right, or left from your position. It's kind of cool. I like how it's built. So
Yes, that's a good point. You definitely need to use your hearing, right, when you're traveling non-visually. And so wearing traditional AirPods and things that cover up your ears are not good and not safe for someone that needs to be using their hearing when they're traveling. There's also a couple apps out there called Ira and Be My Eyes. Those are assistance apps where you can actually call the app and it turns into a video chat, and there's a person there that can help you with a visual task or even with getting around. So they can kind of see through your camera and you could say, hey, can you read this sign to me? Or can you read me the address on this building? But they're meant to connect you to a sighted volunteer, or IRA they're called IRA agents, but they're actual more professionals that help people with vision loss.
visual interpreters.
Yeah, that's good. So that's pretty much wraps up a lot of what I wanted to share. There is a lot more to orientation and mobility, but that's kind of a little bit of what we teach, and hopefully it kind of taught you more about the world of getting around non-visually and with low vision. All right. Nasco's going to talk about, I think, an activity?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a kind of a on your own situation. First of all, do you guys have any? If you guys have any additional questions you would love to share, please email me and I can share if you're okay with it. You be me a resource kind of. If you have any additional questions, please email me. You can also use our studios.blindcommunityradio@gmail.com and just put the subject disability question, any orientation and mobility questions or assistive technology. That's going to be talked about more next year, hopefully. If I have the time, hopefully. We can go into that more into assistive technology. But I can ask Jenny, and then I'll be able to come back with an answer for you if you're willing, or just in person. I'm willing to note down the questions. All right, so now to a fun interactive activity. This is on your own situation, okay? So you have a few options you have available to you. First option is called the classroom experience. It's called the Blind Perspective Classroom Experience. And what you're going to do is you're going to take notes during your. Now, don't do it when you're not as busy, but find a time where you feel like you can note down all your classes where they are. Go through your classes, take notes, and figure out where each place is visually first. Then the next week, you can go some way, like how to do it with your eyes closed, or some way to cover your eyes enough that you can still have that experience and travel to your classrooms that way. Do not have it when you're in the classroom, though. Just enter the building, take it off. It's fine, okay? But as long as you can find the buildings. So that's the first option you can do. You can pick any of these, or you could do all three if you want to. I don't care, okay? The second option you have is called it's a transportation experience. You will contact GoBus, for example, and one of them, you kind of ask good questions, though. Don't ask what do they do? Okay, obviously you can do that on the website, but kind of ask how do you schedule rides, or how do you what questions are they going to ask? Those kind of things, so you can kind of get an idea of how they do that. Another option you can do with that, the transportation option, is you can also take an Uber. This is another option, is taking an Uber to a daily spot. You might go to Meyer every week. When you're done with these options you have of using these apps and things like that, reflect upon it and note it down. And then for the next seminar before the assistive technology, we would like to hear if anyone's able to come to those kind of things and just kind of hear how it went from the last session to kind of build upon that. So that's just your on your own activity. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Email me. Find me in person. You'll find me, obviously. You'll find one blind person around. Well, a guy at least, moving around. So I really appreciate you guys for coming to this event. It was a really fun event. Anything else you want to say? Any advice you want to give or something you want to tell people?
Okay, all right.
There is a QR code that you can fill out a feedback form. I would love you guys to. I encourage you guys. It's optional, but I really, really highly encourage it to give us feedback. Tell us what date you went to the seminar. All these, it's pretty self-explanatory. And if you have any questions as well, please let me know as well. But we'd love you to just fill out the form, and I'd love to read the feedback. And hopefully, this can help us improve this experience for all of you for the Exploration with the Blind series under Blind Community Radio. And we'll be happy to help you as best we can. All right, thank you so much, you guys. And as we say, you do not need to see to know someone's story. Have a great night, everyone. And pick that day where you can absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay. So if you have any additional questions, and anybody who's listening as well to this recording, whenever this is going to be posted, because it could take 100 years. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my. Hang on. Sorry, my phone's going off again. It's on Do Not Disturb.